The city of Varine Prime shimmered like a field of stars caught in glass. Towers made of silver crystal rose high into the sky, their smooth sides glowing with soft blue light. Floating bridges linked one tower to another, and small silver ships drifted quietly through the open air. Everything about the planet seemed perfect, peaceful, controlled, and full of order. Leora, a young scientist of the Varinian race, stood on one of the high bridges and watched the horizon. The twin suns were setting, painting the clouds gold and violet. To her, the sight was beautiful but ordinary. To a human, it would have been breathtaking. That thought made her smile a little. Humans always found beauty in the simplest things. She was waiting for one of them now. Her datapad showed a small blue signal blinking. It meant the shuttle from the Galactic Research Accord had entered the planet's atmosphere. The visitor's name was Ryan, a human engineer assigned to her research team. She had read his file. Born on Earth, specialized in deep space mechanical systems, only 32 standard years old. Young by Varinian standards, fragile too. Varinians lived long lives, often 5 or 6 centuries. Their bodies were tall and elegant with skin that shimmered faintly like starlight. They could survive high radiation, extreme cold, and thin air. Humans, by contrast, were small, short-lived, and easily harmed by heat, light, or pressure. Leora respected humans' creativity, but she still wondered how they managed to travel the stars with such weak bodies. When the shuttle landed, she walked to the platform and waited as the hatch opened. Warm air rushed out, carrying the scent of metal and ozone. A human man stepped out, average height, dark hair, sharp eyes that looked around curiously. He wore a simple work uniform with a tool belt around his waist. His face carried that same spark she had seen in every human she met before, a quiet determination mixed with wonder. He smiled politely. "Leora, I assume? I'm Rian from the Accord." His voice was calm, slightly tired from travel. Leora bowed her head in the Varinian greeting, her silver hair catching the light. "Welcome to Varine Prime, Engineer Rian. I hope your journey was smooth." "As smooth as it can be," he said, stepping down carefully. The gravity here was a little stronger than Earth's, and he felt it immediately. Still, he straightened and looked up at the glowing towers. "This place is unbelievable." Leora's lips curved faintly. "It is home." They walked together through the sky bridge toward the research complex. Transparent walls gave a clear view of the shining city below. Ryan's eyes followed the streams of light and the moving platforms. "You people live inside beauty," he said softly. "Everything looks alive." "Because it is," she answered. "The towers are grown, not built. We guide their crystals to shape themselves over time." Ryan gave a small laugh. "Humans would spend decades trying to do that with machines. You do it with your minds." Leora tilted her head. "You admire easily." He glanced at her. "Maybe. Or maybe I just see how much we have to learn." There it was again. The humility mixed with courage that puzzled her about humans. They were not as advanced as many other races, yet they kept trying, kept exploring places they had no reason to survive in. It fascinated and confused her in equal measure. Inside the laboratory, Rian was introduced to the rest of the team. 3 Varinians and 1 tall, scaled being from the Nahar Collective. The lab itself was a sphere of light and machinery. At the center floated a projection of their current project, a stabilization field for a collapsing wormhole near Talos 5. If successful, it would make long-distance travel safer for dozens of worlds. Leora explained the details. "The wormhole's energy fluctuates beyond our control. We are close to finding balance, but the mechanical systems fail to withstand the stress." "That's where I come in, I guess," Rian said, checking the holo display. "Human material science is good at handling chaos." "Chaos?" Leora repeated. The word sounded almost strange to her. He smiled. "Yes, things that don't behave. Systems that break. We study them until we figure out how to make them useful." Leora watched him work through the data. His fingers moved quickly across the light interface. Though he looked tired, his mind seemed sharp and full of restless energy. Humans never seemed to slow down no matter how short their lives were. Hours passed as they worked. Ryan asked questions no one had thought of. He tested the energy patterns and made small changes to the system's code. Leora observed quietly, noting how his face lit up each time something worked. His excitement was almost childlike, but behind it was deep focus and skill. At one point, the system gave a sudden pulse of light. The energy coils flared and a shockwave rattled the chamber. Leora raised her hand instantly, stabilizing the field with her mind's resonance. The others backed away. Ryan stood close to the console, shielding his eyes but not moving. When the light faded, he looked at the readings. "Sorry about that," he said quickly. "Didn't expect that feedback," Leora frowned. "You could have been injured." He shrugged lightly. "I'm fine. Just a little heat." "You underestimate the danger," she said firmly. "Human bodies are not designed for such exposure." Ryan gave her a small grin. "Maybe not. But sometimes we do things we're not designed for." That answer stayed in her mind long after they left the lab. Later that night, Leora walked through the quiet corridors of the research complex. The twin moons hung outside the wide glass walls, shining pale over the city. She found Ryan on one of the open terraces, sitting by the railing and watching the stars. "You should rest," she said softly as she approached. "Humans need more recovery time than we do," he chuckled. "That's true, but I like to look at the sky before I sleep. Reminds me of home." Leora sat beside him. The air was cool and thin, carrying the faint hum of the city's energy lines. "Tell me about your home," she asked. Ryan leaned back, his eyes reflecting the moons. "Earth is messy, beautiful but unpredictable. The weather changes without warning. The seas rise and fall. People argue, dream, build, destroy, and then build again. Sometimes it feels like the planet itself is alive and we're just trying to keep up." Leora listened carefully. "It sounds unstable," he nodded. "It is, but that's what makes us strong, I think. We learn to adapt. We don't live long, so we try to make every moment count." There was silence for a while. Leora watched his expression. He seemed both fragile and unshakable at once, a strange mix that she could not understand. She had lived more than 200 years, and yet this young human seemed older in some hidden way. "You are different from the others," she said finally. He smiled faintly. "Different good or different bad?" "Different curious," she replied. "You accept weakness and still move forward." Ryan looked at her. "Maybe that's what makes humans human." Leora didn't answer, but something in her heart, something she rarely listened to, felt warm. Over the next few weeks they worked closely. Ryan adjusted mechanical stabilizers, built new energy dampeners, and helped redesign the wormhole field generator. He made mistakes, but he learned fast. He laughed easily, even when tired. He treated every problem as if it were an invitation, not an obstacle. Leora found herself watching him often. His hands were rough from tools, yet gentle when handling delicate instruments. He lacked the natural grace of her people, yet he moved with a confidence that made his clumsiness seem almost charming. And every time something broke, he simply fixed it, never frustrated, never defeated. One afternoon, when a magnetic coil overloaded, the safety field failed. Sparks flew and a sharp pulse of energy filled the room. Everyone stepped back instantly. Everyone except Ryan. He rushed forward, grabbing an insulated rod and shutting down the core manually. His arm shook with effort and sweat ran down his face, but he didn't stop until the light died. Leora hurried to him. "You could have been hurt." He smiled weakly. "It's fine. Got it under control." Her voice rose slightly, something rare for her calm nature. "You risked too much." "Why would you do that?" "Because it needed to be done," he said simply. There was no pride in his voice, only calm certainty. Leora couldn't think of an answer. Later, as he rested in the med bay, she stood at the window watching him. His pulse was steady, his injuries minor, yet something about that moment stayed with her. Humans were not the strongest, not the smartest, not the longest living species, but there was something inside them that refused to yield. Something powerful and mysterious. She began to wonder if fragility was only what it looked like on the surface. That night, as Ryan slept, Leora walked through the empty lab. The wormhole projection hovered in the center, spinning slowly. She touched the light with her fingers and the data shifted, showing the unstable energy lines. She thought about the human man who faced danger without hesitation. About his words. "Sometimes we do things we're not designed for." A quiet realization grew in her mind. Perhaps fragility was not a flaw, it was a doorway. Humans broke, yes, but they rebuilt themselves each time. Maybe that was a kind of strength her people had forgotten long ago. As the lights of the city dimmed for night, Leora looked once more at the stars. For the first time in her long life, she wondered if the most fragile beings in the galaxy might be the most extraordinary of all. The sun rose over Vereen Prime, spilling golden light across the tall silver towers. The research complex stood like a shining heart in the middle of the city, humming with quiet energy. Inside, scientists and engineers prepared for the most important test of the project, the first real attempt to stabilize the Talos Phi wormhole. Leora stood beside the main control sphere, her silver eyes calm but focused. Around her, the room was full of movement. Verenian assistants checked the energy lines. Then Har technician Drun hissed softly as he calculated containment levels. At the back of the chamber, Ryan worked on the control console, his hands moving quickly across the glowing panels. Weeks had passed since his arrival, and the entire team had begun to respect the human engineer. He was still small compared to them, still delicate in their eyes, but his ideas had changed the project completely. The stabilizers he had built from simple alloys worked better than advanced crystal systems. He always found ways to fix what others thought impossible. Still, Leora worried. She noticed the tired lines under his eyes, the way his shoulders slumped at the end of each day. Humans needed rest, but Ryan refused to slow down. "We're close," he always said, smiling faintly. "I'll rest after we make history." Now that history was about to begin, Leora turned toward him. "Are you ready?" Ryan adjusted the last stabilizer's readings and nodded. "As ready as we'll ever be. If this works, we'll finally be able to control the wormhole's energy drift." "And if it does not?" asked Drun, his scales shifting in worry. Ryan smiled slightly. "Then we'll fix it." "That's what humans do." Leora didn't answer, but a quiet unease touched her heart. She respected his courage, but sometimes courage and recklessness walked side by side. The test began. The air inside the lab thickened as the wormhole projection expanded from a faint light into a bright, swirling ring. Waves of blue and gold energy rippled outward. The vibration grew stronger, shaking the floor under their feet. Instruments beeped and flickered. "Containment field at 70%, Drun reported. Stabilizers holding steady." Leora's mind reached out, merging with the energy sensors. Her species could feel power like a living presence. The wormhole pulsed like a heartbeat, unstable, unpredictable. She guided the energy flow with mental precision, aligning it with the generator's rhythm. 80%, called Ryan. His fingers flew across the controls. "It's responding." The glowing ring brightened, its surface smoothing. For a moment, everything worked perfectly. Then, without warning, the lights dimmed. A sudden tremor rocked the lab. Readings spiked into red. "Power surge," Drun shouted. "Containment is dropping." Leora's breath caught. The wormhole flared violently, sending arcs of light across the room. The main energy conduit began to overload, glowing white-hot. "Shut it down," she ordered. "I'm trying," Ryan yelled, punching commands into the console. Sparks flew. "The system isn't responding. Automatic safety locks are jammed." The Verenian assistants backed away as the radiation alarms started flashing. The temperature rose quickly. Leora could feel the raw power filling the air. The wormhole was collapsing inward. It would soon release a burst strong enough to vaporize everything nearby. "No one can survive that energy," said Drun, panic in his voice. "We must evacuate." Leora turned to Ryan. He was still at the console, trying to override the locks manually. His face was tense, his hands steady. She moved toward him. "Ryan, leave it. The chamber will not hold." He looked up at her and smiled faintly. "You go." "I can stop it." Her heart tightened. "No, you cannot. Your body cannot handle such radiation." "Maybe not," he said, "but someone has to try." He pulled off his data glove and stepped toward the emergency hatch leading into the containment corridor, the narrow passage that connected directly to the wormhole generator. Beyond that door, the radiation levels were already lethal. Leora caught his arm. "Ryan, please. You will die." He met her eyes calmly. "If we lose control, thousands could die. The wormhole could tear open space itself. I can't let that happen." Her voice trembled for the first time in many years. "There must be another way." He shook his head. "Sometimes the only way forward is through the fire." Before she could stop him, he stepped through the hatch. The heavy door sealed behind him with a hiss. Inside the containment corridor, the world turned into light and sound. Radiation shimmered like fire in the air. Ryan's breath caught as the heat pressed against his skin. His suit sensors screamed warnings: danger, overload, lethal exposure. But he ignored them. Through the transparent barrier, Leora watched in horror. He moved slowly toward the generator core, every step heavy under the crushing energy. His uniform began to glow at the seams, but still he pushed forward. "Ryan," her voice echoed through the comm link. "Come back. The field is unstable." He gritted his teeth. "I know. That's why I'm here." He reached the core and began to reroute the energy flow manually, forcing open the emergency panels. His hands trembled, but his movements were sure. Every second felt endless. Alarms blared and the wormhole surface flickered violently. "Manual override engaged," he muttered. "Reversing charge polarity now." The wormhole shrieked like a living thing. Energy exploded outward, filling the room with blinding light. The others shielded their eyes. The monitors went white. When the light faded, the room fell silent. The alarms went still. Leora's heart pounded. "Ryan," she whispered. Static crackled through the comm. Then faintly his voice came. "Containment? Stable." Relief and disbelief flooded through her. She ran to the hatch and opened it with shaking hands. Smoke drifted out, but the corridor was quiet. Ryan stood near the core, breathing hard. His uniform was scorched, his hair disheveled, but he was alive. The radiation sensors blinked wildly, yet his body remained upright, steady. "Ryan," Leora breathed. How are you still standing?" He smiled faintly. "Guess humans are tougher than you thought." They rushed him to the medical wing. The scanners ran over his body, showing readings that made no sense. His cell structure was changing. Radiation that should have destroyed him seemed to have triggered some kind of adaptation. His vital signs were not just stable, they were stronger than before. Drun looked at the results, his wide eyes gleaming with confusion. "This is not possible. No known human physiology can do this." Ryan lay on the bed, pale but conscious. "I don't understand it either," he said softly. "But maybe we're not as fragile as everyone believes." Leora sat beside him. "You risked everything." He looked at her with tired eyes. "You would have done the same." She didn't answer. Her mind was full of questions, but her heart was full of something deeper, something she couldn't yet name. Later that night, when he slept, Leora stood by the window overlooking the stars. Her thoughts swirled like the light of the wormhole had. For the first time in her long life, she didn't understand what she had witnessed. Humans were supposed to be limited by their biology, short lives, weak bodies, fragile hearts. Yet this man had walked through radiation that could melt steel and had come out alive. Not through luck, but through something inside him. Some hidden strength his kind carried quietly. The next morning, when Ryan awoke, he found Leora sitting beside him. "You should have left me," he said softly. She shook her head. "No, I could not," he gave a small laugh. "You're starting to sound a bit human." "Perhaps," she replied. "Perhaps that is not a bad thing." In the following days, the Council of Vereen summoned Leora to report the event. She explained everything, the surge, the overload, and Rian's impossible survival. The elders listened with disbelief. One of them finally said, "You claim this human entered a lethal energy field and lived." "That cannot be. The data must be false." Leora placed her hands on the table. "The data is true. I saw it myself. And you believe he did this by willpower?" Another asked, almost amused. "I do not know what force kept him alive," she said quietly, "but I know what I saw. He did not fear the impossible." The council exchanged uncertain glances. "Perhaps humans are more adaptable than we assumed," one murmured. When Leora left the chamber, she found Ryan waiting outside, leaning on the railing and looking out at the rising suns. "What did they say?" he asked. "They do not understand," she answered. "Neither do I," he smiled. "Maybe it's better that way. Some things are meant to be lived, not explained." She looked at him for a long moment. The glow of the suns reflected in his eyes, warm, human, unyielding. In that moment, she realized something. Perhaps strength was not always about power or perfection. Perhaps true strength was the courage to stand inside the fire and still believe you could walk out of it. She had once believed her human mate was fragile. Now she wasn't so sure. The days after the wormhole incident were quiet but tense. The research complex buzzed with activity, yet everyone seemed to move with a mixture of awe and caution. Scientists whispered about Ryan's survival, staring at the monitors that still showed abnormal readings. Nothing in their training could explain what had happened. Leora walked down the glass corridors, her silver eyes thoughtful. She could still see the glow of the wormhole energy in her mind, twisting and flaring, threatening to consume everything. And yet, through it all, Ryan had stepped into that fire and come out alive. Not only alive, but stronger in ways she could not measure. She found him in the main lab, sitting at a table strewn with data pads. He was quiet, reviewing readings from the wormhole stabilization attempt. The faint marks of scorching were gone from his uniform, but his hair was still slightly disheveled, and dark circles under his eyes hinted at exhaustion. He looked fragile, as any human might look after such exposure, but the sensors told a different story. "Ryan," Leora called softly, "you should rest. The data can wait." He looked up and smiled faintly. "I will soon. I just need to see if the energy patterns are stable." "You're still thinking about it," she said, stepping closer. "Even after everything that happened?" He nodded. "We can't let it fail again. If we do, the consequences could be worse than we imagined." Her gaze fell on him, studying the small human frame that had survived what no one else could. "Do you realize what you did?" she asked. "You walked into lethal energy knowing it could end you." Ryan shrugged. "I didn't think of it as walking into danger. I thought of it as solving a problem. Humans see challenges as puzzles. Some we can't solve, some we survive through trial and error." Leora frowned slightly. "Trial and error, that is, reckless, maybe," he admitted. "But sometimes trial and error is the only way to find the truth. I didn't expect to survive, but I also didn't expect to fail." Her mind struggled to comprehend his reasoning. Her people valued calculation, control, and predictability. Humans valued something different, a blend of courage, curiosity, and stubborn determination. She could see it in Ryan now, in the steady way he focused on the data despite everything. He had changed. She could feel it. Later, they were called to the Council of Varine again. This time, the discussion was more urgent. The elders wanted to understand how a human had survived an event that should have been fatal. The room was a large crystalline chamber, filled with softly glowing light giving every surface an ethereal shimmer. The senior elder, Velon, spoke first. "Leora, you report that your human engineer survived radiation beyond the limits of his species. Explain." Leora nodded. "It is true. The energy should have destroyed him. Yet he adapted somehow. His vital signs remain stable. His cellular structure shows changes that cannot be explained by current science." One of the elders, Sarin, leaned forward. "You suggest that a human's biology evolved under exposure? That is impossible. Humans are fragile." "They appear fragile," Leora said quietly. "But what I saw, what I felt, it is more than fragility. There is a hidden resilience." Velon raised an eyebrow. "Resilience? Elaborate." Leora took a deep breath. "During the incident, he moved forward despite certain danger. His body absorbed energy that should have harmed him. His mind did not waver. I believe humans carry a latent potential that activates under extreme stress. It is not strength by our definition, but strength nonetheless," Sarin whispered to another elder. "Could it be courage alone?" Leora shook her head. "It is not only courage. It is adaptation, persistence, and an unyielding will to survive. Something my people have rarely seen in such intensity." The council fell silent. No one could fully grasp what she described. Humans had always been considered a minor species in galactic terms. Yet here was evidence that they could endure the impossible. Not because they were immortal or because their bodies were strong, but because their will could shape their reality. After the council meeting, Leora returned to the lab. Ryan was already there, tinkering with a small mechanical stabilizer he had repaired. He looked up when she entered. "They don't believe me, do they?" She shook her head slowly. "No. Your survival challenges everything they understand about life. They cannot see what I saw with my own eyes." He smiled faintly. "That's okay. I don't need their understanding. I just need to keep working." Leora watched him for a long moment. His calm determination, the quiet steadiness in his voice, and the energy that seemed to radiate from him. It was undeniable. "You are not fragile," she said softly. Ryan paused, raising an eyebrow. "I'm not." "No," she said, her voice firmer. "You face impossible situations without fear. You adapt when others would collapse. You carry a strength that cannot be measured by our machines." He looked at her carefully. "Do you mean that as a compliment or a warning?" She laughed quietly, a sound that surprised even her. "Perhaps both. I am realizing that I underestimated humans. I believed you were delicate, but you are something else." Ryan returned to his work, adjusting the stabilizer. I never thought of myself as strong. I just do what needs to be done. And yet that is enough, she replied. Over the next week, the team continued testing and refining the wormhole stabilization system. Every time Ryan stepped into the lab, there was a quiet sense of tension and hope. Everyone knew what had happened, and yet they watched him work as if he were invincible. Leora began noticing small changes in him. He moved with more confidence. His hands were steadier. Even his laughter had a calmness she had not seen before the incident. One evening, they were running simulations late into the night. The lab was silent except for the hum of the machinery. Leora leaned over a console, reviewing energy flow data. Ryan sat across from her, eyes fixed on the holographic wormhole model. Leora, he said suddenly, do you ever wonder why humans survive things we shouldn't? She considered the question. I have wondered. I thought it was luck at first. But now I see it may be something deeper. He nodded slowly. Humans are designed to survive failure. We fall, we hurt, we break, but we learn. Every time we do, we become stronger, even if only a little. Perhaps that's why I survived. Not by being invincible, but by being human. Leora stared at him, her mind turning over his words. She had spent centuries studying life, energy, and evolution, and yet, she had never considered that strength could exist in such a quiet, persistent form. You mean, your body adapted because you refused to give up? Yes, he said simply. And my mind refused to surrender. We are built to endure the impossible, to keep moving even when every instinct says to stop. Her heart raced. She could feel a deep respect building inside her, stronger than anything she had felt for a human before. She realized that the fragility she had assumed was an illusion. Humans were small, yes, but they carried a force that could shape events in ways her people could not predict. That night, Leora stood outside the lab, looking at the stars. The twin moons of Vereen Prime cast their pale light across the city. She thought of Ryan, resting inside after another long day of work, and felt a strange warmth. For the first time, she understood the depth of human resilience. It was not physical strength, nor long life, nor control over energy. It was the will to face the impossible and keep going, no matter the cost. She remembered the glow of the wormhole, the way he had walked into it without hesitation. Her people revered control and calm, yet here was a species that thrived in uncertainty, that drew power from the unknown. It was beautiful. When she returned inside, she found Ryan still awake, reviewing the stabilization field data. He looked up as she entered. Couldn't sleep, he asked. I was thinking, she said softly. About humans. About you, he smiled faintly. And you are more than I imagined, she admitted. Stronger in ways I did not understand. He chuckled quietly. Maybe strength isn't always obvious. No, she said, her silver eyes meeting his. Sometimes it is quiet, hidden, until you see it in action. He leaned back, looking at her with curiosity. And what do you see? I see someone who is not fragile, she said, her voice steady. Someone who can face the impossible and keep moving forward. He smiled, the faintest light of pride in his tired eyes. Then I guess I am what you always doubted. Leora shook her head slowly, a smile touching her lips. No, you are more than doubt. You are proof. In the days that followed, Leora began to look at Ryan differently. The spark of admiration grew into quiet respect. She noticed how he approached every problem without fear, how he learned from mistakes, and how he inspired others to do the same. The other scientists began to notice too. Where once they had seen fragility, they now saw endurance, ingenuity, and a courage that went beyond physical limits. And through it all, Ryan remained humble. He did not boast of what he had survived. He did not flaunt his endurance. He simply continued to do what needed to be done, one careful step at a time, one quiet solution after another. For Leora, it was a revelation. Humans were not perfect. They were not immortal. But their spirit, the unyielding determination that carried them through failure, pain, and danger, was something extraordinary. Something her people had never fully understood. She realized with a quiet certainty that she had misjudged him from the very beginning. He was not fragile. He was remarkable. The Talos Vive wormhole had stabilized, but the victory felt fragile. Every scientist in the lab knew that the delicate balance could shift again at any moment. The machinery hummed steadily now, glowing with calm blue light. But the memory of the previous surge lingered in everyone's minds. Leora moved among the equipment, her silver eyes scanning every reading. She had grown more confident in the system thanks to Ryan's contributions. Yet she could not shake the thought of him, walking into radiation that would have killed any other being. She still marveled at the resilience he had shown. "Ryan," she called, finding him at the control console, studying the latest energy maps. "Do you realize what you did the other day? You faced something that no one else could survive, and yet you did it calmly. How can you do that?" Ryan glanced at her, his dark eyes reflecting the glow of the holographic wormhole. "I don't know if I can explain it," he said softly. "I didn't think about it as life or death. I thought about the problem and how to fix it. That's all." She studied him, trying to understand. "But your body, any normal human would have collapsed. The radiation alone should have been fatal." He shrugged. "Maybe my body is normal. Maybe it's the human mind that makes the difference. We keep going even when it seems impossible. We don't always survive, but we keep trying. That's our strength." Leora shook her head slowly. "I always thought strength was about control, about precision, about perfection, but you showed me something else." He looked at her curiously. "What do you mean?" "I mean that humans are not strong in the way my people are strong," she said. "You do not control energy or bend matter with your minds. You cannot live centuries or resist radiation naturally. And yet, you endure. You adapt. You survive. That is something no technology or training can teach." Rian leaned back, resting his hands on the console. "Maybe strength is not about perfection. Maybe it's about refusing to give up, even when everything seems impossible." Leora thought about that. She had lived more than 200 years and had seen countless events that required strength. But she had always measured strength as something visible: ability, control, endurance. And yet here was a human, fragile in appearance, who had faced the impossible and lived. And not only lived but changed. His body had adapted. His mind had remained calm. His courage had remained unbroken. It was a revelation. The team continued their work on the stabilization system, but now they worked with a new perspective. The humans' methods, so different from the Verenian approach, began to show value in ways they had not anticipated. Ryan had a habit of trying solutions that seemed reckless, adjusting circuits in unconventional ways, testing the limits of materials, and improvising under pressure. At first, Leora worried that he would fail. Now she watched with awe as his creativity solved problems others would have considered unsolvable. One afternoon, they faced a sudden complication. A fluctuation in the wormhole's energy caused the readings to spike. Lights flickered and alarms rang softly. Leora's mind reached for control, but she could not stabilize the system alone. Rian was already moving, his hands adjusting settings. Rerouting energy flows through stabilizers in ways no one had anticipated. Sparks danced along the conduits, but he moved with calm precision, ignoring the small shocks that would have hurt any human. "You are reckless," Leora shouted, worry lacing her voice. He looked at her briefly, smiling faintly. "I'm careful when it matters. Sometimes risk is part of solving the problem." And in that moment she understood. Humans were built differently. They did not avoid danger, they faced it, calculated it, and adapted as needed. Their strength was not about avoiding harm. It was about enduring it, learning from it, and using it to grow stronger. By the time the fluctuation subsided, the system was stable again. Leora checked the readings and saw what she had feared: a spike of energy that should have destroyed the stabilizers. Yet everything held, and Rian was standing calm and unharmed. "Again, you survived," she whispered, more to herself than to him. He looked at her with quiet amusement. "Maybe humans are just built that way." Her heart tightened. "I no longer think of you as fragile. I see now that your strength is deeper than anything I expected." The days passed, and Leora observed more of Ryan's quiet heroism. It was not always dramatic. Sometimes it was the way he stayed late to check the stabilizers, ensuring nothing went wrong. Sometimes it was the way he encouraged others after a failed simulation, calmly explaining what they could learn. Sometimes it was the way he refused to give up, even when he was clearly exhausted. Her admiration grew, but so did her understanding of humans. They were not perfect. They made mistakes. They had limits. And yet, within those limits, they carried an unyielding determination that made them capable of extraordinary things. One evening, Leora found Rian sitting on a terrace outside the lab, looking at the stars. The twin moons of Vereen Prime cast their pale light over the city, "You're thinking," he said softly without looking at her. "I am," she replied. "About humans." "About you," he smiled faintly. "I suppose I make that easy." "You do," she admitted. "I thought humans were fragile, but I see now that fragility is only a surface. There is something deeper inside, something that refuses to break, even when the body is weak. Something extraordinary." He turned to her, curiosity in his eyes. "And what do you call it?" "I call it strength," she said quietly but firmly. "A strength that does not depend on size or lifespan or natural power. A strength that depends on the will to continue, to endure, to survive, and to protect what matters." Ryan looked at her, and for a moment, there was silence. Then he said softly, "Maybe that is what humans have always been. I never thought of it before. But perhaps it is true." Leora nodded. "And I am beginning to see it in you. You are not just a human. You are a testament to what our species sometimes forgets, that courage, determination, and willpower can shape outcomes that logic cannot predict." He smiled faintly. "I didn't mean to teach you a lesson, I just acted as humans do." "And in doing so," she said, her silver eyes bright with emotion, "you revealed something remarkable." The project continued with renewed energy. Leora noticed that the other scientists were also learning from Ryan's approach. Where once they relied solely on precision and calculation, now they tried new methods, encouraged experimentation, and considered solutions that seemed unorthodox. The human's influence was subtle yet profound. Leora felt a quiet satisfaction. She realized that Ryan had changed more than the project. He had changed her understanding of life, strength, and endurance. One night, as the city below gleamed in pale light, Ryan and Leora walked together along the terrace. He carried a small notebook filled with sketches and notes about the stabilizer systems. "You never sleep, do you?" she asked gently. "Sleep comes when it must," he said with a faint grin. "But the mind never stops thinking. That is how humans survive, I think. We stay curious. We stay alert. We stay ready. And that is what makes you strong," Leora said softly. He looked at her and she saw something in his eyes. A quiet pride, not arrogance, but acknowledgement. Maybe strength is different for every species. Maybe this is ours. And perhaps, she said, it is something worth respecting, even marveling at. For the first time, she felt a deep, unshakable admiration for this human, not just for what he had survived, but for the quiet courage that guided every action he took. She understood now that strength was not always visible. Sometimes it was hidden, quiet, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And in Ryan, it had revealed itself fully. As the days passed, the bond between them grew stronger. It was not spoken of in words, but in understanding. Leora found herself looking at him differently. She noticed the way he approached problems, the way he endured long hours, the way he encouraged others, and the quiet determination that never wavered. One evening, as they watched the stars together, she thought about the journey that had brought them here. She had come to Vereen Prime expecting a delicate human, someone she could admire for their curiosity but ultimately see as fragile. Instead, she had discovered something entirely different. Rian was not fragile. He was a human, yes, but he carried within him a strength that transcended biology. It was a will that refused to give up, a mind that adapted under pressure, a heart that dared to face danger when others would run. She realized that true strength was not always about physical power or lifespan or natural abilities. Sometimes it was quiet, subtle, and hidden. Sometimes it was human. And sometimes it revealed itself when least expected. The city of Vereen Prime glowed softly under the twin moons. The research complex stood quiet, its towering crystalline structures reflecting the faint blue light from the laboratories inside. The wormhole near Talos 5 had remained stable for weeks, a rare calm after the chaos of the first surge. Yet Leora knew the galaxy was full of uncertainties. Even with the stabilization system in place, dangers could arise that no calculation or machine could fully predict. Her mind wandered back to the day Ryan had walked into the collapsing energy field, facing radiation that should have destroyed him. He had emerged alive, calm, and stronger than before. That human strength, the quiet, unyielding determination, had changed everything she thought she knew about resilience. She walked through the lab corridors, her silver eyes scanning the holographic displays of wormhole activity. Ryan was already there, reviewing readings at the main console. His small frame seemed calm, yet she could see the quiet intensity in his eyes. Every human gesture he made, the tilt of his head, the precision of his hands on the controls, spoke of a mind fully alert, fully alive. "Ryan," she said softly, approaching him. "We've been lucky so far. But this system, this wormhole, it could fail again. Are you ready if that happens?" He looked at her, his gaze steady. "I will do what humans always do," he said simply. "I will face it and I will find a way." No matter the risk, her heart tightened. She had once believed humans were fragile, small, short-lived, easily broken. She had admired their curiosity, but she had doubted their endurance. Now she understood. Humans were fragile in appearance, yes, but inside they carried a power that could defy expectation, a courage that refused to yield. Suddenly, the holographic display flickered. The wormhole's energy spiked unexpectedly, and alarms rang throughout the lab. Leora's mind reached for the stabilization system, but she sensed the anomaly was beyond ordinary fluctuations. "Readings are off the charts," Drun shouted, the Nahar technician's scales bristling with concern. "The field is destabilizing." Ryan's hands moved quickly across the controls, rerouting power and adjusting the energy dampeners. Sparks flew and warning lights flashed, but he remained calm. "We can stabilize it," he said. "We have to." Leora watched him, her heart pounding. The energy readings were climbing faster than ever before, and the wormhole seemed to pulse with a life of its own. Radiation levels were rising. Any being without extraordinary resilience would have been forced to retreat. Yet Rian moved forward, adjusting the system with precision, adapting to each fluctuation. "Ryan, step back," Leora shouted, fear lacing her voice. "It's too dangerous." He shook his head. "I can't. If we lose control, the wormhole will collapse entirely. Systems, planets, even space travel routes will be affected. Someone has to act." Her mind raced. She wanted to stop him, to protect him. Yet she also understood the truth. Humans survive not by avoiding danger, but by facing it, learning and adapting. That was their gift. And this human, this man, embodied it fully. The energy surged again, brighter and hotter than before. The wormhole glowed white, shaking violently. Instruments beeped, some malfunctioning. Leora's body trembled as she reached out with her mind, trying to stabilize the flow of energy. But even her Varenian abilities had limits. Rian stepped closer to the core. "We can do this," he said calmly. "Just keep me safe on your end. Guide the energy and I'll adjust the systems manually." Her silver eyes met his dark ones, and in that instant, she saw the unshakable determination inside him. It was more than courage. It was resolve. It was humanity distilled into action. "Very well," she said softly. "I will support you. But do not underestimate the danger." "I never do," he replied. He moved into position beside the core, his hands flying over the controls. Radiation surged around him, yet he remained steady. His body adapted in real time, energy coursing through him but not harming him. Sparks arced along the conduits, and the hum of the wormhole grew louder, almost like a living heartbeat. Leora guided the energy flow with her mind, stabilizing the outer layers while Ryan adjusted the core manually. The two of them worked together, a perfect combination of human adaptability and Varenian control. Slowly, the wormhole began to stabilize, the violent pulses softening into a smooth, controlled swirl. Drun and the other assistants watched in awe, hardly daring to breathe. They had seen humans do remarkable things, but this was beyond comprehension. Finally, the core stabilized completely. The lights dimmed to a calm blue glow and the alarm ceased. Ryan stepped back, sweat on his brow, his uniform singed in places. He was exhausted yet alive. Leora rushed to his side. "You did it," she whispered. "You survived." He gave her a faint smile. "We did it, together." In the following days, the incident became the turning point for everyone involved. Scientists studied the system with renewed confidence, knowing that even when the impossible happened, humans could face it and adapt. Ryan's approach, practical, calm, and fearless, had shown a new way to tackle challenges. Leora found herself reflecting more on human strength. It was not about perfection. It was not about power or lifespan. It was about persistence, adaptability, and courage in the face of uncertainty. Humans could fail, they could break, yet they would rise again. That was something even her people, with all their knowledge and longevity, sometimes struggled to understand. She watched Ryan as he continued his work, always calm, always careful, yet always ready to take risks when needed. Every movement spoke of quiet confidence, and every decision showed remarkable foresight. "You have changed the way we think about humans," she said one evening as they walked through the glowing corridors of the lab. "I just do what humans do," he replied softly. "We try, we adapt, we endure." Leora shook her head, smiling faintly. "No, you are more than that. You are proof of something extraordinary, something my people have long forgotten, the meaning of strength beyond control and perfection." Weeks later, a new crisis emerged. A spatial fluctuation near the Talos Fifth system threatened to destabilize nearby trade routes. Ships would be at risk if the energy spike continued. The council turned to the human who had faced the impossible and survived. Rian and Leora stood together on the observation deck, overlooking the stars. "We need to act quickly," Leora said. "The fluctuation could worsen." Rian nodded. "Then let's do what humans do best. Face it." They moved into the control chamber. Energy readings spiked higher than ever. The wormhole shimmered violently, threatening to collapse. Other scientists hesitated at the threshold, unsure if they could survive the surge. But not Rian. He stepped forward with calm confidence, moving toward the controls with precision and purpose. Leora guided the outer field with her mind while he adjusted the inner stabilizers manually. The energy surged and twisted, yet he remained steady, adapting to each change. It was a dance of courage and intellect, human and Varenian working together. Slowly, the dangerous fluctuation subsided. The wormhole's energy returned to a stable rhythm. Drun whispered almost reverently, "I cannot believe it. He did it again." Rian stepped back, breathing heavily but smiling faintly. "It's not just me," he said. "It's everyone working together. Humans, Varenians, we all have strengths to share." Leora looked at him, her heart swelling with admiration. She had once thought him fragile. She had believed his body, his species, could not withstand the challenges of the galaxy. Now she knew the truth. His spirit was unbreakable, his courage unmatched. "You are incredible," she said softly. "And you," he replied, "helped me see that strength can be quiet, hidden, and still powerful." From that day onward, Leora's understanding of humanity changed forever. Humans were not perfect. They were limited in lifespan, physically weaker than many races and often unprepared for extreme conditions. Yet within them was a strength that transcended all measurement. They could endure the impossible, adapt, and overcome, and Rian, her mate, embodied it fully. Together they faced challenges no one else could. Together they showed the galaxy that fragility was only a surface, that the human heart and mind could achieve wonders beyond expectation. One evening, as they stood on the terrace watching the twin moons, Leora finally spoke the truth she had kept in her heart for weeks. "I once believed you were fragile," she said softly. "But now, I know what you truly are." Rian smiled faintly, reaching for her hand. "And what am I?" "You are human," she said, "but also extraordinary. Strong in ways that cannot be measured. Unbreakable in ways my people have never seen." He squeezed her hand, his dark eyes reflecting the moonlight. "Then maybe we're both stronger together." She nodded, her silver eyes shining. For the first time, she felt a certainty that went beyond science, beyond logic, beyond expectation. Human strength, human courage, and human determination were more powerful than she had ever imagined. And now she knew she would never underestimate it again.